What's up, everybody? My name's Nukinfutz because I'm effing nuts. Today, I wanted to talk about the general difficulty of all the bosses in ICC from my experiences on the PTR. My guild and I have put in an absolutely disgusting amount of time into the 2 rounds of PTR, and I've downed all of these fights outside of LK. Some small disclaimers are that this list is assuming 0% progression. This list is made in a general difficulty sense with some opinions from my guild's healers, tanks, and DPS. And lastly, these are my guild's experiences and my experiences. You may have different experiences with your guild, or just simply have different opinions, and that's perfectly fine. With all that out of the way, let's jump into the list. I'm going to just do these bosses in order, so let's start off with good old Marrowgar. Bone storming his way right into D tier. Marrowgar isn't very difficult at all. So long as you break bone spikes and avoid bone storm, then you'll be fine. Marrowgar should be a very nice and easy introductory heroic boss for your guild. Moving on to Lady Deathwhisper and her spooky ghosts, and oh boy does the difficulty spike for Marrowgar. We're going to place her right here. There's a lot of annoying nuances in this fight. The transition from phase 1 to 2 needs to be clean. Avoiding ghosts is hard, especially when your monitor is turned off, interrupts throughout the fight, and especially the handling of mind controls. This boss will test your patience quite a bit, as you watch your fellow raiders getting hit by ghost after ghost until you lose all sanity. Going from Marrowgar to this is almost cruel. You'll put this boss near the bottom of A tier as well, honestly, but I think she's not as hard as some of the future bosses. Next up, we have the hardest boss ever made. Just kidding, Gunship is nicknamed Lootship for a reason. Definitely the easiest boss in the raid. I'm not entirely sure how you can wipe to this unless you're tanking the enemy captain, just simply AFKs or something. Regardless, free loot, and never bother swapping a normal for Lootship. Anyways, Deathbringer Saurfang is pretty rough, and a lot of you will want to down him for that coveted DBW, but he may just crush your dreams for a while first. I'm going to place him in B tier, which may be a bit controversial, but I'll explain my reasoning. The boss is basically a target dummy with very minimal mechanics. It is mostly a throughput check for healers and a fast taunt swap for the tanks. The blood beasts are usually easily handled and there is no movement required. So long as your healers are pumping and your tanks taunt swap quickly, Saurfang should fall after a bit of practice. You can even DI a target to effectively eliminate a mark from the fight to make the fight even easier. You could argue moving Saurfang to A tier, but it may make more sense when you guys see the rest of the list. But yeah, with the lower spire done, let's move on to Festergut. Festergut is quite the tank buster depending on how you want to handle this boss. The mechanics aren't too bad though, so I'm going to put him in C tier. Just dodge malleable goos being thrown at you and stack on spores. It's a little scary when these mechanics overlap, but that's about it. With a fairly standard tank strategy and basic mechanical skill, Festergut isn't too bad. The other ugly abomination, Rotface. Rotface is a little annoying when it comes to movement. The slime tank has a kind of rough job, especially near the end of the boss, but overall Rotface is fairly easy. He'll be joining Marrowgar in the D tier. A bit easier than his brother. You could argue having him in his O tier above Marrow as well. Rounding out the Plague Works, we have Professor Putricide. A bit of a rough fight with some personal responsibility and some movement. I'm going to put him as the first entry in the A tier. Juggling the Plague, avoiding malleable goos, and not getting hit by oozes are quite a bit to handle. Not to mention a tank or DPS having to learn how to pilot the abomination. Definitely deserving of A tier. Another thing that's rough is this is the first boss that will deplete your heroic attempts, so every wipe will hurt even more. We're going to head to the Crimson Hall now with a little boss called Blood Prince Council. This boss is a bit of a doozy with quite a bit of movement and lots of things going on at once. The bomb juggling, flame orb soaking, spreading for empowered shock vortexes, avoiding normal vortexes, all sorts of stuff. As a result of this, I'll place it near the bottom of A tier. Once you learn the fight and have good communication and callouts though, the boss will consistently fall over. I could also see this boss being at the top of B tier depending on your guild's strengths. Now it's time for Mommy. Blood Queen Lana'thel is a bit annoying when it comes to personal responsibility. You have to communicate bites, take fires out of the raid, and touch each other's tips occasionally. But with that said, I'll put my queen at the bottom of B tier. She really isn't that difficult all things considered, but any wipe costs you a heroic attempt as well. You could argue pushing her to the top of C tier even. Anyways, it's time to fight some dragons and enter the Frostwing Halls, starting off with Valithria Dreamwalker. The main challenge of this fight is staying awake as a DPS. But no, seriously, obtaining stacks as a healer is a bit obnoxious, and the tanks having to pick up basically every ad they can is a little annoying as well. But I'm still going to put her at the bottom of C tier. She shouldn't take that many attempts unless her healers are really struggling. Now onto the more difficult dragon, Sindragosa. Cindy is quite the difficult encounter, a ton of personal responsibility when it comes to all the debuffs that go out, and especially during Phase 2. There are quite a few ways to instantly wipe the raid if only one person messes up a key mechanic. Ice Tombs, Mystic Buffet, Unchained Magic, and Chill to the Bone are all very important mechanics to master if you have any chance of killing this dragon. With this in mind, I have to put her right at the top of A tier. Very deserving of this position, and would be even higher if there wasn't one more boss in this raid. Last but not least, the granddaddy of them all, the Lich King. I assume it comes with no surprise that I have to put him into S tier. The amount of mechanics, tank damage, raid damage, DPS checks, and reaction checks all jam-packed into this boss is pretty nuts. It's definitely evident that this boss is not really balanced around 0%, but absolutely doable. You will likely waste countless attempts on him, and you might not even see Phase 2 while doing so. This is definitely the hardest boss we've seen in Wrath Classic without a doubt. There will definitely be day 1 kills still, but I highly doubt many guilds will kill him week 1 due to the heroic attempts existing. But that's my tier list. Let me know what you guys think, and ideally in a constructive way and not in a this list is trash sort of way, you know? Anyways, thank you all very much for watching. Feel free to subscribe or like the video. Stay tuned for more videos and big parses, and don't forget to keep pumping and being Nukinfutz.